Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a journey, a really fascinating one, into the genetic landscape of Pakistan.
A region just incredibly rich in history and, well, genetic diversity.
Exactly. And look, we're not trying to find some mythical Pakistan gene. That's not really how genetics works. Right?
Not at all. It's more about understanding a unique genetic recipe, if you like, something woven together over thousands of years.
And to help us do that, we've got a whole stack of research, studies that really paint a picture. We're talking ancestry, specific communities, cultural practices, even health stuff.
Okay.
Let's unpack this.
Right. And our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is really to see how all these threads, ancient influences, unique community stories, modern health challenges, how they all sort of converge in the genetics of Pakistan.
So you, the listener, can grasp the, let's say, the layers of it all.
Yeah, moving beyond the simple stories to appreciate the complexity. It's genuinely fascinating stuff.
Okay, so let's start big picture. If there's no single Pakistan gene, what is special about the genetic makeup there? You mentioned its ancient role as a crossroads.
That's a great place to start. What's fascinating here is what archaeogenetics studying ancient DNA tells us. Pakistan, the land itself, sits right at this incredible meeting point of ancient human migrations.
Meeting point? How so?
Well, we see this foundational layer of ancestry. It's related to the farmers from the Indus periphery, think ancient roots.
Okay.
But then later on, there's this significant input, genetically speaking, connected to steppe pastoralists, people moving in.
Steppe pastoralists, like the Yamnaya, the ones linked to movements into Europe.
Exactly. That same broad source population that also contributed ancestry to Eastern Europe back in the Bronze Age. It's a major connection.
Wow.
And this movement, this input, it helps explain the spread of Indo-Iranian languages right across this very region we now call Pakistan.
Right.
It's why many northern groups today show this, well, it's modest, but it's a very real steppe genetic signal.
So it's layered on top.
Precisely. It's layered onto the older South Asian ancestry. It wasn't like a total replacement, not at all. It's a layering and addition happening over a long time.
This layering, it sounds like it connects directly to that old debate, doesn't it? The whole Indo-Aryan migration theory into South Asia versus maybe more of a homegrown story.
It really does. That's a crucial point. You know, geneticists, linguists, archaeologists, they're all still actively discussing the precise balance of these influences.
So the genetics adds a piece to the puzzle.
A big piece. The evidence of steppe ancestry, it provides a strong genetic thread for migration theories. It shows movement of people, you know, not just ideas or language spreading on their own.
But it's not the whole story.
No, because that deep underlying Indus periphery farmer ancestry is still very much there. It confirms it was never just one group simply replacing another. It's complex, interaction, integration.
It really drives home how history isn't simple, is it? No easy narratives.
Absolutely. It's always this intricate weave. Migrations, local developments, mixing over huge spans of time and space.
Okay, so we've got the broad strokes, the ancient currents.
Yeah.
But Pakistan today is incredibly diverse. How does this play out when we zoom in? You mentioned micro stories of specific communities. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it really does. And one of the most, well, striking examples is the Kalash community. They live way up in the Hindu Kush Mountains.
Ah, yes, I've heard of them. Often mentioned as quite distinct.
They are. They're a small group, pretty isolated, and genetically they stand out. They're what we call a genetic outlier.
Why is that?
It's largely shaped by that isolation and also something called genetic drift. Basically, random chance fluctuations in gene frequencies within a small population over time.
There are those stories about them being descended from Alexander the Great's soldiers. Right?
That's the popular tale, yeah. That's romantic. But researchers, when they actually look at the DNA, well, they find very little evidence for any recent large-scale outside mixture like that.
So the genetics tells a different story.
Pretty much. That distinctiveness we see in genome scans, it seems mostly down to that isolation and drift. Though, you know, even scientists debate just how complete that isolation was. It adds another layer.
Fascinating. And what about other groups? I know the Hazara community is another one often mentioned for its unique background. They're in Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
That's right. And for the Hazara, study after study consistently shows something really interesting. Substantial East Asian ancestry mixed in with their West Eurasian genetic threads.
East Asian. How much?
Well, one study, looking at a data set from Quetta, estimated about around 50% of their ancestry clustered with East Asian populations.
Wow, half.
Yeah. And what's really powerful is that this genetic finding lines up incredibly well with the community's own oral histories, which talk about roots in Central and East Asia.
So genetics can actually confirm or support those long-held community stories.
Exactly. It's a great example of that synergy between genetics and cultural memory.
Okay, so we've seen these quite distinct examples, often linked to isolation or specific migration histories. What about the big groups, the majority populations like the Punjabi, Sindhi, Pathan, Baloch? What does the genetics show there?
For those major groups, yeah, the study is using whole genomes, Y chromosome for paternal lines, mitochondrial DNA for maternal lines. They generally find that expected crossroads pattern we talked about earlier.
Meaning a mix.
A mix, yeah. Primarily West and South Asian genetic components, but with local variations, little twists reflecting their specific regional histories and interactions.
So not uniform.
Definitely not. And this is crucial. None of these large populations are genetically homogeneous, far from it. Actually, the amount of genetic variation within groups like Punjabis or Pathans is often really quite large.
Which tells us.
It tells us that even within these broad ethnic or national identities, there's an incredible richness of diverse subhistories. Genetics reflects this tapestry, past interactions, movements, all layered in there. National identity contains multitudes, genetically speaking.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And these histories, these diverse origins, and even current cultural practices, they must leave genetic footprints.
Yeah.
But let's talk about one statistic I saw that really, well, it stops the scroll, as they say. It reveals a major cultural practice with genetic impact.
Ah, you must be talking about consanguinity or cousin marriage.
That's the one. The figure's quite high, isn't it?
It is remarkably high. The data suggests nearly 2/3 of marriages in Pakistan are between cousins, first or second cousins, mostly.
2/3, that's huge.
It's among the highest rates reported anywhere in the world. And what's also striking is that analyses, looking at multiple rounds of national demographic and health surveys, show this rate has been incredibly stable over recent decades. It hasn't really dropped off.
Okay. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just a sociological observation, right? It has genetic consequences.
Absolutely. Very direct genetic implications for the population.
So what are they? What happens genetically when cousin marriage is so common?
Well, the basic impact is this. Marrying a relative modestly increases the chance that both partners, even if perfectly healthy themselves, happen to carry the same rare recessive genetic variant.
Because they share recent ancestors.
Exactly. They share a portion of their DNA from those recent common ancestors. So if there's a rare problematic gene variant lurking in the family line, the odds are slightly higher that both cousins will inherit a copy.
And if both parents carry that same recessive variant,
then their children have a 1 in 4 chance of inheriting 2 copies of that variant, one from each parent. And for many recessive conditions, you need 2 copies to actually develop the disorder.
so it increases the incidence of certain rare genetic diseases.
Precisely. It doesn't create new diseases, but it mathematically increases the probability of these recessive conditions appearing in the population.
Given how prevalent the practice is, how does public health in Pakistan deal with this? Is there pressure to change this tradition?
That's a really important and sensitive question. Public health professionals there are very aware of the genetic implications. But the approach is generally focused on informed choice and providing non-stigmatizing genetic counseling. It's not about shaming tradition or telling people they shouldn't marry cousins.
More about providing information.
Yes. The goal is to educate families about the potential risks, about screening options if they exist for certain conditions, basically empowering them to make informed decisions for themselves within their cultural context.
That makes sense. It really highlights that intersection, doesn't it? Culture, tradition, biology, modern health knowledge, all intertwined.
Exactly. It's never just about the genes in isolation.
And this leads us perfectly into how all this, the deep history, the specific community stories, the cultural practices, how it impacts public health right now. Let's touch on a couple of specific genetic conditions that are everyday concerns in Pakistan.
Absolutely. 2 really significant examples come to mind immediately. First, there's a thalassemia.
That's an inherited blood disorder, right?
Yes, exactly. It affects hemoglobin production. Across Pakistan, the carrier rate people who have one copy of the gene variant but are usually healthy is estimated around 5 to 8%.
That sounds quite high.
It is significant. And tragically, it translates into about 5,000 babies being born each year with β-thalassemia major, the severe form of the disease which requires lifelong medical care.
Wow. So what's being done?
Well, because of this burden, screening programs and premarital counseling specifically for thalassemia are being actively expanded, especially in districts where it's known to be more common, trying to prevent new cases through awareness and testing.
Okay. And the second condition you mentioned?
The second one is G6PD deficiency, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency.
Bit of a mouthful.
Huh. Yeah, it's often called the red cell stress test enzyme. Basically, it helps protect red blood cells from damage caused by certain triggers, including some infections and medications.
And how common is that in Pakistan?
Looking at national data syntheses, the overall prevalence is around 1.8%. But, and this is key, there are definite hotspots. In some northern regions, the prevalence can reach up to about 8%.
And why is knowing about G6PD deficiency so important from a public health perspective?
It's critically important for malaria treatment. Certain common anti-malarial drugs, like primacoin, can trigger severe hemolysis, a dangerous breakdown of red blood cells in people who have G6PD deficiency.
Oh, wow. So treatment could actually harm them.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Which is why test and treat policies are so vital. Testing patients for G6PD deficiency before giving them those specific drugs acts as a crucial safety net.
It sounds like a classic public health dilemma for both these conditions, really.
Yeah.
You know, the debate, should screening be universal for everyone, or should it be targeted just to those high prevalence areas or specific groups?
That's exactly the debate. Public health experts argue both ways.
Pros and cons to each.
Definitely. Universal screening seems ideal for catching every case, but the logistics, the cost, they can be huge, especially in resource-limited settings.
Right.
Targeted testing is more efficient with resources, but you inevitably risk missing cases outside the known hotspots, or in populations not initially considered high risk.
And then you have issues of access, equity. It gets complicated fast.
Extremely complicated. It really shows how you translate scientific knowledge into practical, effective, and fair public health policy on the ground. It's a constant balancing act. No easy answers.
Okay, before we wrap things up, let's just quickly nail down some of those key numbers again, the kind of crisp stats listeners can take away from this deep dive.
Good idea.
So first, that figure on marriage patterns. Nearly 2/3, that's the approximate share of cousin marriages nationally. And importantly, it's been stable over recent survey waves.
A key cultural and genetic factor.
Then for β-thalassemia, remember 5–8% carriers across the country,
Right.
leading to 5,000 births with thalassemia major. That really highlights the health burden.
A significant challenge.
And finally, G6PD deficiency, 1.8% overall, but spiking to 8% in the north. Crucial context for safe malaria treatment.
Got it. Those numbers paint a clear picture.
But it's not just about the numbers, is it? As we've discussed, there are these ongoing debates, these lingering questions that make this whole area so dynamic.
Absolutely. It's worth just touching on those again. For instance, that origins debate. Precisely how much ancestry comes from Bronze Age steppe migrants versus the older Indus periphery populations in the north? The timing, the exact routes. Genetics gives us clues, but the interpretation is still being refined.
Right, the balance is still debated.
Then there's that very practical dilemma. Policy versus privacy, or maybe policy versus individual choice. With known risks like thalassemia linked to high consanguinity, how aggressively should screening programs be pursued? Premarital, school age, should they be mandatory, or always voluntary to avoid stigma?
Huge ethical and practical questions for health authorities.
Huge. And finally, there's the challenge of, let's call it, handling heritage stories responsibly. How do we celebrate the genuine uniqueness found in groups like the Kalash, shaped by drift, isolated, or the Hazara, whose East Asian genetic links match their history? How do we celebrate that pride without oversimplifying the science or falling into outdated, pure lineage ideas?
Finding that balance between cultural identity and complex genetic reality.
Exactly. These are the complex human questions that really make genetics endlessly fascinating. It connects the deep past, present-day culture, health, identity. It's all in there.
So bringing it all together, what does this all mean? If there's no single Pakistan gene, What's the final takeaway?
I think the core takeaway is that the Pakistani genetic landscape is this incredibly rich tapestry. You've got those ancient Indus threads as a base, then layers from the steppe, from neighboring Iran. You have influences from centuries of Silk Road interactions. You have unique stories emerging from mountain isolates like the Kalash. And then you have cultural practices like cousin marriage that literally change the math for rare genetic variants.
A confluence of factors.
Absolutely. It's a place where history, culture, geography, and health all visibly meet within the genome. And the key thing is, through informed choices, through respectful public health approaches, this knowledge, this understanding of the genome can actually be used to improve lives.
That's a powerful and hopeful note to end on. It really emphasizes the potential of this knowledge.
It does.
And perhaps it leaves us, and you, our listener, with a final thought to ponder. How do the genetic recipes of the places you call home, wherever that may be, tell their own unique stories of migration, culture, health, and resilience?
A great question for everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Pakistan's fascinating genetic landscape. We hope you keep exploring the incredible stories hidden within our shared human DNA.